going on, everyone? Welcome in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. My name is Kyle Yates. I will be with you for the next hour answering your start-sit questions. First, we got a few things that we need to go over. One of them, guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're here and joining the conversation, make sure that you show your support by just taking 2 seconds out of your day. Just go down, hit the subscribe button. Also, like this video, helps out in a huge way. And then again, as a reminder, you can find and follow me on Twitter at KyleYNFL. The main thing that we have to talk about here, guys, is, of course, you can see it right below, that 21 members of the Titans organization have tested positive for COVID-19, and their game this weekend is now in question. It is in jeopardy and in doubt of being played. So the NFL is hellbent on making sure that these games happen. However, with a positive test coming up again yet this morning, the Titans are unable to open up their facility, which now causes the NFL to engage in a conversation of saying, do we need to push this game back? Can we push this game back? Or do the Titans forfeit this game? Are they forced to forfeit? So we are now looking at the potential, and this is where it gets a little interesting, is because the Bills, who their opponent is this week, play on Thursday night next week. So last week we saw the Chiefs and Patriots game be pushed back to Monday night. That's not a solution here this week, because you can't push back the Bills to Monday night and then expect them to turn around and play on Thursday. So one of the solutions that the NFL has at least engaged in conversation with, we're still waiting to see what this will look like, but it is that this game between the Titans and Bills will be pushed back to Monday or Tuesday, and then you will see the Thursday night game be moved with the Bills and Chiefs, I believe off the top of my head, to Saturday next week. So we potentially won't have Thursday night football next week, but maybe Saturday football instead. So a lot of moving parts here. I think that the way that we need to approach this right now as fantasy managers is to simply assume that we are not going to have any of the Titans players on our fantasy teams yet again this week. It sucks. I hate it, because obviously I've got Jonnu Smith everywhere. For people who have Derrick Henry, it's a big bummer. Of course, for Ryan Tannehill as well, like that. These are some key pieces that are now potentially going to be out of your lineup yet again this week. But then also on the other side of the ball with the Bills. If the Bills can't play this game, then we lose John Brown, Stephon Diggs, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, if he comes back, and Josh Allen. There are a lot of dominoes that fall with this. And so we are going to make sure that we continue to talk about this on the podcast, on the live streams here. We'll keep you updated as we get more information. Again, that's a huge reason why you guys need to be following us on Twitter too. At FantasyPros is the main account, at Mike Tagliere NFL, at Dan Harris 80, and then myself at Kyle Y NFL. As soon as we get the information, we're tweeting it out. We're talking about it and giving the fantasy implications of it. So make sure that you head over, find and follow us on Twitter. It's a huge benefit for you and a leg up on your league mates. Okay, let's pivot here. I am going to talk about some of my favorite starts and sits of this week before we get into your questions. Again, I don't want to take a ton of time here, so I'm just going to fly through them and make sure that we get to your questions because I'm sure that you have a ton of them. So looking at, I'm basing this off of half PPR ECR. ECR stands for Expert Consensus Rankings, and takes a look at the average ranking of all the experts across the industry and puts them together to give an average here. So looking at the running back, let's talk about someone in the top 20 that is currently ranked in half PPR ECR that we should be looking to sit if we can. Now, I'm in the same boat that many of you are, where we're looking at some of our rosters and we're saying, I have to start this player as my RB2 this week or my RB1. So this conversation may not necessarily be of benefit in a huge way to the majority of you, but it will to some people, because the options that you have on your roster due to the injuries of losing Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler last week, like those are huge hits to your roster. So, but the player that we have to talk about, he's currently ranked at 14 in half PPR ECR. It's Kenyon Drake, guys. Kenyon Drake, if you roster Kenyon Drake, you know how much of a disappointment he's been this year. You know how much of a disappointment this Arizona offense has been in general. So looking at Kenyon Drake and saying, to rank him all the way up at 14 against a tough matchup here against the New York Jets run defense, that's very aggressive. And I don't think that he should be started that confidently. I've said since last week's major disappointment, in a prime position to score, prime position to just explode and calm the nerves of fantasy managers, he disappointed in a big way. And so moving forward, we have to view Kenyon Drake, until it clicks, as a low-end RB2. So you might be facing the decision of looking at guys like Josh Kelly, from the Los Angeles Chargers, who now inherits a larger role potentially with Austin Eckler leaving for the next 6 weeks minimum. You might be forced to play Josh Kelly over Kenyon Drake because of just the volume, and you don't have those other concerns. We'll talk about that. But if you have Kenyon Drake, and I'm looking at these players in the top 20, I'm saying I would sit him if you can, or at least adjust your expectations. I think that ranking him at just outside a top 12 running back on the week is very, very aggressive. I mean, he's ranked just above Todd Gurley, James Conner. Even though James Conner has a tough matchup, I'd be playing James Conner over him. Jerick McKinnon doesn't look like Raheem Mostert's coming back this week. I'd be playing Jerick McKinnon over him. Like, there are just a lot of moving parts here with Kenyon Drake that I want to say, if you can sit him, make sure that you do. Let's go outside the top 20 at the running back position for a player that I believe that you should be starting if you have the opportunity. And I talked about him. It's Josh Kelly. And I came away a little bit surprised here as I sat down to do my projections. I'll be releasing my weekly projections article with notes on every single fantasy relevant player for projections and every single fantasy relevant player. And I sat down to do the Chargers, and I was like, I can't not give Josh Kelly a very, very large workload. Yes, it is a tough matchup. If this was a better matchup, I think I'd feel a little bit more confident recommending him. But yet, at the same time, for him to be at 25 in half PPR ECR, just outside RB2 range, I think that you can confidently roll in Josh Kelly based on the assumed workload that he's going to step in and handle. Yes, it's the Saints defense. It's not a great matchup, but yet he should see enough volume to return that value. Let's flip over here to the wide receiver position, looking at a player within the top 30 that I believe you should be sitting. Guys, this is going to come as no surprise if you've listened to me for any length of draft season into the regular season. I have no idea why T.Y. Hilton is still up at wide receiver 29 in half PPR ECR. He has done nothing so far this season to indicate or to warrant that type of ranking as a solid wide receiver 3. Again, the matchup's fine, but yet at the same time, we haven't seen anything from Phillip Rivers that suggests that he can connect with T.Y. Hilton deep downfield, or that T.Y. Hilton has the speed or anything to be able to pull away from defenders. So at this point, T.Y. Hilton needs to be outside the top 40 in rankings, if not even further than that. That's where he is in my rankings. I am not recommending him as a start anywhere, which many experts are with this ranking of 29. Going outside the top 30, there's a player that I believe we should seriously be considering starting this week, and that's Laviska Shenault, sitting there at 34. Laviska Shenault offers a safe floor every single week. It is a fine matchup for him out of the slot against Houston. I think this is a matchup that you can exploit, and if you are sitting there and you're deciding between two players, and Laviska Shenault is one of them, I think that you can confidently roll him into your lineup as a steady start. Let's look over at the quarterback position, because again, I want to fly through these and get to your start-sit questions. Looking at a player within the top 12 that you should be considering sitting. I'm not necessarily saying that you should consider sitting him, but yet we need to exercise caution with Matt Ryan's ranking all the way up at QB8. For him to be ranked at QB8 above some of these other guys like a Gardner Minshew, who has a great matchup. Teddy Bridgewater, again, has a great matchup against Atlanta on the other side of the ball here. Even Kirk Cousins at 13. I'll talk about him in a second. Like, I believe that that's a closer decision than many people are thinking right now. And so Matt Ryan has disappointed immensely over the past couple weeks. He's going to be most likely without Julio Jones in this matchup, but this is a fine matchup for him. I would rank him more so around the low-end QB1 of like a QB12, QB13 even, just outside that range, rather than a confident start all the way up at 8. So I think he can finish there, but yeah, at the same time, we need to exercise a little bit of caution. Everyone else within the top 12, I'm saying that I think you should start them. They're pretty solid matchups. Let's go outside the top 12. Kirk Cousins, sitting right there at QB 13. He is a player who absolutely deserves to be considered for your starting lineup this week as a streaming option. Looking at Kirk Cousins, this is a 57.5 point over-under game on Sunday Night Football with Minnesota and Seattle. And you are looking at Seattle as the number one easiest matchup for opposing wide receivers. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are going to have huge games. You flip the page there over to the Minnesota Vikings. They are the fourth easiest matchup for opposing wide receivers. Russell Wilson is going to go off in this one. And then, of course, you have that same Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. They're also going to go off in this one with those matchups. So points are going to go up on the board in this one. And if that's the case, then you're looking at Kirk Cousins being able to easily throw on these Seahawks corners. I think you can start him confidently. At the tight end position, there are a few names that, as you look at it at first glance, you go, oh my word, I really don't want to start any of these players. You're talking about Tyler Higbee, Zach Ertz all the way up at 5, Tyler Higbee at 7, Dalton Schultz at 8. He's done enough to warrant that ranking, but yet in this one, I don't believe that Dallas is going to have to throw the ball as much. Evan Ingram. I'm sorry, I'm in standard. I'm flipping it now. Zach Ertz is still at 5. Tyler Higbee at 7. Dalton Schultz at 8. Mike Gesicki at 9. Gesicki has not been involved in the offense over the past couple weeks. Against San Francisco, how can we confidently recommend him as a start? Evan Ingram at 10. Evan Ingram has done nothing this season to warrant that type of ranking, but yet when you look at the players and the matchups behind him, you go, okay, I kind of get it. So the tight end position, if you do not have one of the locked and loaded options of George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, and then we would put Jonnu Smith into that conversation, but of course he comes with the concern that this game isn't going to happen. I think that you are now just simply rolling the dice and you're saying which player gives me the best opportunity to score a touchdown. So if I have to pick a player out of here that I would say sit if you can, Mike Gesicki all the way up at 9 is just one that I'm not willing to get behind. Looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick in this offense, he has not been looking Gesicki's way over the past couple of weeks. So you are absolutely betting if you plug him into your lineup that he finds the end zone, and that's just not a place that I want to be. I'm not super comfortable looking at outside the top 12. Greg Olsen at 17. Again, I talked about this matchup here with Kirk Cousins. If points are going to go up on the board in this one, then I want the pieces that are involved in it. Greg Olsen has been involved in this offense, and I think that he can come through for your fantasy roster as a streaming option this week. Personally, I would be playing him over Mike Gesicki. If I had that opportunity, I believe that I would sit Mike Gesicki and start Greg Olsen. All right, guys, let's flip over to your start-sit questions. Thank you so much for your patience. We are going to fly through these. Okay, let me go through here. Half PPR, who should I sit? Devontae Parker, Robbie Anderson, Terry McLaurin, and Jamison Crowder. Out of that list, I think Devontae Parker and Robbie Anderson are smash plays this week. I believe that they belong in your lineup. However, Terry McLaurin has a tough matchup here, and there are the unknowns of now Kyle Allen starting at quarterback over Dwayne Haskins. Jamison Crowder has the unknowns of Joe Flacco at quarterback versus Sam Darnold. So I think that Jamison Crowder is going to be the option here that I say I think you should sit if you have out of those 4 players, because we just don't know, is Joe Flacco going to lock on to Jamison Crowder the way that Sam Darnold did? So I think playing the odds here, I'll go with Devontae Parker, Robbie Anderson, and Terry McLaurin. Joshua Kelly or Darrell Henderson to start. I'm going to go with Joshua Kelly here just because of the volume, the guaranteed volume. Now, Darrell Henderson could absolutely come out and score more fantasy points, but yet that would mean that Sean McVay has to give him the ball, and that did not happen last week. So I think that as far as like his ranking, you're probably going to see, or as far as rankings, you're probably going to see Joshua Kelly ranked higher across the industry than Darrell Henderson because he's a safer bet. I don't know if Joshua Kelly has as high of a ceiling as Darrell Henderson does against Washington, but yet at the same time, the floor is lower for Darrell Henderson. So I'm going to play the odds there. I'm going to go with Joshua Kelly. Pick 3, Mike Davis, Kareem Hunt, David Johnson, and Deontay Johnson. I am personally going to go with Mike Davis. I believe that he belongs in every starting lineup that you've got. Kareem Hunt, he belongs in every starting lineup that you've got him. But then the interesting part comes down here to David Johnson and Deontay Johnson. David Johnson at this point, it's a fine matchup, but yet at the same time, I don't think that I've seen anything from him to suggest that he can present as high of a ceiling as someone like Deontay Johnson. Johnson has Darius Slay to worry about, of course, but yet as far as the corner matchup, but yet at the same time, Deontay Johnson's first 2 games of the season were 10 targets and 13 targets. So I think that you can lean back into that and get guaranteed volume. And then, of course, he always has the talent to be able to convert those into a score or into high yardage. So I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson, Kareem Hunt, and Mike Davis in that situation. Matt Ryan or Tom Brady? I'm going to go with Matt Ryan here. Looking at Tom Brady, now Scotty Miller is pretty much the only healthy wide receiver that he's got right now, and that comes with a asterisk where Scotty Miller's banged up as well. So Mike Evans is reportedly going to try to play this game, and he's going to test out his ankle in pregame warmups. That's never a good sign. So if I'm looking at these players, Tom Brady has to win, and it's a tough matchup to begin with against Chicago. You have Chris Godwin out, you have Justin Watson out. You're looking at Tyler Johnson, who I was not impressed with in college. Coming into this game, I don't think he's going to do much. So then the ball's got to go somewhere. Is it going to Gronk? Is it going to Cameron Brate? Where's the ball going? So I think that Tom Brady just doesn't have as high of a ceiling in this one, and I think that Matt Ryan has the better matchup. So I'm going to lean into the matchups there. I'm going to take Matt Ryan. Would you trade Derrick Henry for CMC in half PPR right now? Thanks a lot. I think CMC comes back next week. I think that he was close for this one, so I think that he comes back next week. So Derrick Henry, of course, comes with a huge concern. So I think if you can get that advantage in half PPR and you can get CMC if Derrick Henry doesn't play this week, I don't know why the CMC owner would make that trade, but personally, if you can do it, I think you should. Should I pick up Minshew and play him over Tom Brady? I personally would. There's a pretty big split there in my rankings between Minshew and Brady. Darius Slayton or Justin Jefferson in the flex this week? I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson here pretty easily. Daniel Jones has looked like a train wreck so far this season, and I'm not willing to trust any of the Giants' receiving options. Daniel Jones only has 2 touchdowns on the season to 5 interceptions, and that's not even taking into account the fumbles that he's lost. So I just don't know if this New York Giants, yes, it's a great matchup for New York, but yet at the same time, I want to see them do it before I confidently say that I should start Darius Slayton over Justin Jefferson, who has, I talked about it, a fantastic matchup this week. So I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson there pretty easily. Pick 2, CeeDee Lamb, Malcolm Brown, or M. Brown. So I'm assuming, and D. Johnson. I don't know if this is Deontay Johnson or David Johnson. I'm going to assume they're all wide receivers. So CeeDee Lamb, Marquise Brown, DJ Chark, and Deontay Johnson. In that situation, I'm going to go with DJ Chark and Deontay Johnson. I think Marquise Brown has an excellent chance to find the end zone in this one, but yet he's not. I have to view him as a wide receiver 3 every week because he comes with extremely high highs and he comes with extremely low lows. So I want to play the percentages here, and I'm going to lean into the target volume with DJ Chark and Deontay Johnson. All right, I am scrolling down here. Full PPR, Dalton Schultz or Hayden Hurst. I'm going to go with Hayden Hurst in that situation. And I think with Dalton Schultz, he's absolutely surprised me. And he's absolutely come out and been dynamic and been a great fantasy asset so far this season. But he's been doing it on the back that, or on the fact that Dallas has thrown the ball 203 times through 4 games. They're going up against New York this week, and that defense, I don't think they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. I think that they're going to want to keep the ball on the ground, give it to Zeke. I think this is a big Zeke game, and so I think that it limits the ceiling for these receiving options. Dalton Schultz is going to have to find the end zone, I think, in order for that to work out. Hayden Hurst, I'm expecting no Julio in this one, and I think that he becomes a focal point of the offense, so I will go with Hayden Hurst there. Colton Tucker, full PPR, Eric Ebron or Greg Olsen. I'm going to go with Greg Olsen here, but those guys are back-to-back in my rankings. I think that Ebron is a fine streaming option this week, so really whichever one that you... Ebron has better chance to find the end zone. Greg Olsen has a better chance to soak up targets. So in a full PPR, I'll go with Olsen as that split there, but again, that's super close. Great question. Half PPR, Jerry Jeudy, Golden Tate, or Tim Patrick. I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy here. We don't know yet who the starting quarterback is for the Denver Broncos. Drew Lock is practicing on a limited basis. I don't think that he plays in this one, so we're looking at Brett Rippon again. Jerry Jeudy wasn't super involved in the offense last week. He was able to make that incredible catch, find the end zone. So Tim Patrick, though, has been playing extremely well. So I think those two are close in my rankings, but yeah, I'm going to give the edge there to Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy or Debo in half PPR. I'm going to go with Jeudy there as well. Half PPR, Dalton Schultz, Myles Gaskin, or N'Keal Harry. That situation, I will go with Dalton Schultz. Full PPR, who do you start in your flex? Damian Harris, Hollywood Brown, or T. Higgins? It's going to be Hollywood Brown there for me, especially as a flex where I don't need to rely on him to provide me, wide receiver 2 numbers. I can put him in there, and if he, hits, then great. I potentially win my week. If he disappears from the offense like he has previously this year, then it's not going to kill me. So as far as in my flex, looking at those options, I'm going to go with Hollywood Brown. Is Michael Thomas expected to return? And if so, would you start him over either Lamb or Kupp? Michael Thomas, at this point, we are waiting for the practice reports from today. They play on Monday, so we should see the practice reports coming out here actually pretty soon. So I think Michael Thomas at this point is expected to return. I am expecting him to return, and if so, I'm playing him over Lamb or Kupp. Slayton or Miller? And then you put in quotations here, or parentheses, Mike Evans might be out as well as Godwin for the flex spot. So Scotty Miller, of course. So in that situation, I'm going to go with Darius Slayton because he has the better matchup. Scotty Miller, if he really is the only like receiving threat that the Bears have to lock onto, then they can just they can simply shut him down. Scotty Miller is not anything like outstanding as far as the talent perspective. He's a fine football player. I'm going to give him that, but yet he's not enough to single-handedly beat a very, very stout defense that has yet to give up a receiving touchdown or give up a touchdown to wide receivers this season. So at this point, I'm going to go with Darius Slayton there in the plus matchup against Dallas Cowboys defense. Half PPR, sit one, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, James Robinson, or Antonio Gibson. Or play all four in one flex spot. I don't understand that last part of the question, but in that situation, I'm going to go with sitting Antonio Gibson. Joe Mixon, guaranteed volume. Not a great matchup against Baltimore, but guaranteed volume. Saw him become a part of the receiving game last week. 6 targets, Giovanni Bernard 0. So I think that even if Joe Mixon can't get a ton done on the ground in this one, I think that he can make up for it with his work in the receiving game. Damian Harris. Damian Harris, David Montgomery, Rojo, David Johnson, and Todd Gurley. Right call to start Rojo, David Johnson, and Todd Gurley. So Todd Gurley absolutely belongs in your starting lineup. David Johnson has a plus matchup, so I'm going to give him that one. It's between David Montgomery and Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones comes with a concern that if he drops one more pass like he did last week, he had 3 drops last week. He had 3 drops last week, and they were really bad. They were bad. He got a ton done on the ground, but yet at this point, we could see Keyshawn Vaughn be more of a factor tonight than some are anticipating. We also could see Leonard Fournette actually active in this game. That's a very small percentage chance, but it could actually happen. So Ronald Jones comes with question marks. He can get it done against the Bears defense, which has not been as stout as it was in previous seasons as far as their run defense. David Montgomery comes with a safe floor, but he doesn't come with the upside that Ronald Jones does. So I think that in that situation, let me pull up my rankings just to confirm that. That's super close between the two. I have Ronald Jones 2 spots above David Montgomery. So I'll lean into that. I'll lean into my rankings there. I have Ronald Jones at 23. I have David Montgomery at 25. I just think that you need to expect low-end RB2 numbers from either of them. Both come with question marks, though. All right, let's find some more questions here. Bridgewater, Herbert, or Matt Ryan? I am going to go with, in that situation, in that order, Matt Ryan, Teddy Bridgewater, and then Justin Herbert. We don't even know at this point if Justin Herbert is going to be the starter, so that's something to keep in mind too. We haven't heard on that one yet, so just keep that in mind. Should I trade Mike Davis for Justin Jackson or Jerick McKinnon? Both Justin Jackson and Jerick McKinnon are going to be backup roles here. Justin Jackson, we don't even know what his role is going to be in this offense. If Josh Kelly is going to take the majority of the touches and Justin Jackson is simply going to be a change of pace back. But Mike Davis, as soon as Christian McCaffrey comes back, he loses his value. So I think at this point, David asked the question. I think, David, at this point, you just need to ride it out with Mike Davis. Now, if you are saying, because I love him in this matchup, but if you are saying that I have the depth to be able to get by this week without Mike Davis, and then I need a long-term solution, then that would be the point that I would probably look at Jerick McKinnon. He's more of a safe bet. I think he's going to move, again, he'll move to a backup role, but he'll still have the receiving workload with Raheem Mostert coming back. But otherwise, I'm just going to ride it out with Mike Davis because I think that I want to win this week. And I think that if I don't have the other options, Mike Davis he's a top 12 option for me. Half PPR, pick 2, Chark, Lamb, Gordon, or Latavius Murray. All right, so in that situation, I am going DJ Chark for sure. And then I will probably go. So Melvin Gordon has the concerns of Phillip Lindsay coming back into the lineup. Phillip Lindsay should be back this week. He practiced in full yesterday. So I think that looking at Melvin Gordon, he has those concerns where he now moves into kind of a similar territory as Latavius Murray, as a low-end RB2, high-end RB3. So I think in that situation, I'm going to go with the scoring upside of CeeDee Lamb and DJ Chark. What do we do with Julio Jones? At this point, you hold on to him. If you trade him, you're trading him low. And when he comes back fully healthy, he's going to be a dominant fantasy force. So I think at this point, you simply just have to ride it out with Julio Jones and assume that he's going to get back to being a top-end wide receiver 1. So I'll hold on to Julio there. Let's go to, I answered this question earlier, Tom Brady or Gardner Minshew. That's Gardner Minshew for me. Start Lamar or Dak. Well, congratulations on having that choice. A lot of us other people are deciding between Tom Brady and Gardner Minshew. I'm going to go Lamar there. Dak, again, I talked about it, that he's been doing this and performing for fantasy on the back of incredible passing volume, and I just don't think that continues here this week. I think it's a Zeke game, so I don't think he has as high of a ceiling as Lamar Jackson. Pick 2, Devontae Freeman, Myles Gaskin, and Deebo Samuel. It's probably going to be Devontae Freeman and Myles Gaskin. Deebo Samuel, we just don't know what his involvement in this offense looks like now with Brandon Ayuk as a part of it. So as far as doing my projections, it's George Kittle as the main receiving option, and then it's kind of just like whoever else. It's just kind of splitting up the projections and the targets from there. So Deebo Samuel, he can always pull away and find the end zone on a long catch, but yet at that point, I just think that you're betting on low target volume and him scoring. I'll go with the guaranteed volume of Devontae Freeman and Myles Gaskin, both who should be heavily involved through the air. Pick 1 for your flex in a full PPR, Michael Thomas, James Robinson, or Jonathan Taylor. It's Michael Thomas if he plays, and we should have more clarity on that here pretty soon. Otherwise, it's James Robinson. If we get word that tomorrow Michael Thomas is still not practicing, which I don't see why that would be the case, if that happens, then at that point I'll pivot and I'll go with James Robinson. Fantastic matchup for him. Jonathan Taylor, fine matchup, but not as good as James Robinson. So Michael Thomas if he plays, James Robinson if Michael Thomas doesn't. In a standard league, start Ertz or pick up and stream Eric Ebron. This is the part of the season where we are at, people, with Zach Ertz. I'm very frustrated with Zach Ertz too. I've got him in several spots, and this has just not been great. I'm finally sitting him for the first week because I do have, in my Dynasty League, I have Mark Andrews behind him too. So I was starting both of them as flex options. Back to this one, I think that you still have to look at Ertz because of the offense, and you're hoping that Alshon Jeffrey comes back this week. You're hoping that Deshaun Jackson comes back this week and opens up the offense. But at this point, it's more of a conversation that I think it needs. It absolutely could have been earlier on in the season. I'm going with Ertz here still, though, but that's close. Pick 2, Mark Ingram, Josh Kelly, and Lev Bell. It's going to be Josh Kelly and Lev Bell for me. Mark Ingram, we just have no idea. He can easily score in this matchup. It's a fine matchup for him, but he could see only 7 carries, or he couldn't find the end zone, and you only get 3 points out of him, 4 points out of him. So I think Josh Kelly and Lev Bell are going to see guaranteed workload. I'm going to lean into that. Is trading Mike Davis and Keenan Allen for Julio Jones and Miles Sanders a trade I should do? With Mike Davis, of course, his value falls off a cliff here probably after this week. With Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, we just don't know how long he's going to be out. He is practicing in individual drills today, so it doesn't sound like he's going to be out multiple weeks. He might be out for this game. I'm assuming that he's going to be out for this game, but he might be back next week. So I think if you can turn Keenan Allen into Julio Jones and Miles Sanders and get that guaranteed workload at the running back position, Miles Sanders hasn't been anything fantastic, but you're hoping that the offense turns around. So I will make that trade for Julio and Miles Sanders. I think that to get a season-long asset in Miles Sanders over Mike Davis, I think is a smart trade there. In a 2-quarterback league, do I drop Stafford for Tannehill or Burrow? I am fine dropping Stafford for Burrow, especially this week because of the bye week, and Tannehill, not Tannehill, because we don't know if the Titans are even playing this week. So to drop Stafford for Burrow, I think that's a smart move, especially in a 2-quarterback league. If he's somehow still on your waiver wire in a 2-quarterback league, that's crazy. So yeah, go get Joe Burrow there. Scotty Miller or Josh Kelly in PPR. In PPR, I'll go Scotty Miller because I think that he's going to get targets in this one. That's for sure. So I think that Scotty Miller in a full PPR, if that's a half or standard, I'll go with Josh Kelly. I'm looking here. Alshon Jeffrey worth a roster spot. Yeah, he's worth a roster spot if you can afford it. It all comes with context. If you absolutely need a play this week, Alshon Jeffrey should return to practice this week. I think he did practice yesterday, so there's a very good chance that we see him on the field on Sunday, but yet it's not a great matchup. So I think that if you can get him, though, and you can afford to hold on to him, excuse me, goodness, if you're going to and afford to hold on to him, then I think that you can make that trade or that roster pickup. Excuse me, I looked at the word trade and said it. So I think if you can do that, then absolutely I would if I can afford it. Pick 3 in full PPR: Kareem Hunt, Jonathan Taylor, James Conner, and James Robinson. This is a tough one. I have Kareem Hunt, Jonathan Taylor, and James Robinson all within my top 12. James Conner just falls just outside of it, outside of the top 12. So that one, I'm going to leave James Conner out, but that's very, very difficult to do. I think that you're kind of grouping all these players within the same tier. And so at that point, you just have to kind of just plug them into your lineup and don't think about it again. Don't second guess it, because they all have a similar outlook this week where they all could explode and be top 12 options. If you spend a ton of time nitpicking, I think that you're going to drive yourself crazy. So I would personally be going with Kareem Hunt, Jonathan Taylor, and James Robinson in full PPR. But again, that's close. If Mostert sits, would you start McKinnon over guys like David Johnson, DJ Moore, or Chark? I think that you can. I don't know if I would start him over DJ Chark necessarily. DJ Moore, I'm considering that. David Johnson, I'm fine with that. Again, it's a fine match or a good matchup for David Johnson, but we don't know what this offense is going to look like after Bill O'Brien's departure. So DJ Chark has an enormous ceiling. It'd be very, very hard for me to sit Chark. But again, a great matchup here for Jerick McKinnon against Miami. So I would probably go Chark there, but then McKinnon would be the next guy up behind. Cooper Kupp, DJ Chark, or Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a low-end wide receiver 2 for me this week if he does play. Just with the injury concerns, I don't want to bet on him as anything more than that. So Cooper Kupp against Washington has an excellent chance to find the end zone. DJ Chark, though, against Houston should have a big, big game. I think I'm going to go DJ Chark there, and then Cooper Kupp right behind him, and then Mike Evans as a low-end wide receiver 2. So I think that Chark is the smart play there. Damian Harris or Dearness Johnson in full PPR. I'm not ready to trust Dearness Johnson just yet. Very, 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 very tough matchup against Indianapolis here. So I'm not viewing him as anything more than an RB4 this week. Damian Harris, if this game does happen, has an excellent chance to return RB3 value. You should see a ton of work if Jarrett Stidham is the quarterback here. They're going to lean on their run game. They're going to give Damian Harris the ball again. 15 plus carries is in the cards again. So I think that against a beatable Denver run defense right now. So I think that Damian Harris is the answer there. Dearness Johnson, I think, can be a fine play down the road in plus matchups, but yet I'm not ready to trust him yet. I'm not ready to roll him into my lineup over someone like Damian Harris. Start DJ Chark or Allen Robinson in half PPR. Allen Robinson there for me. Robert Woods or T. Higgins in half PPR. It's going to be Robert Woods for me. T. Higgins, a tough matchup here in Robert Woods. I don't know if LA is going to have to throw the ball a ton in this one, but yeah, I think that Robert Woods has an excellent chance of finding the end zone. Goff or Herbert or Breeze. I will go with... That's one that I have to look at my rankings. Those are close. Not with Herbert. Herbert's down my rankings a little bit. Jared Goff, I have at 13, and Drew Brees, I have at 9 right now. So I think that with Michael Thomas coming back into the lineup, he has an excellent chance to finish as a top 10 quarterback yet again. So I think that I'm going to go with Drew Brees there, and then Jared Goff, and then I have Herbert at 17 right now. That's subject to move, of course. He might not even start this game, and so I think that I think we should have clarity, hopefully, by Sunday kickoff to be able to know if we can start Drew Brees. But also, he's in that Monday night game too, so you have a little bit of time there. Drew Brees is the answer across the board, though. All right, let's look at Joshua Kelly or Justin Jefferson in the flex in half PPR. And that one I'm going to go Justin Jefferson pretty easily. Again, huge blow-up potential. Standard league, Dearness Johnson, Devontae Freeman, or Darrell Henderson. In that one, I'm going to go Darrell Henderson. Devontae Freeman is tempting, but I think he gets a boost because of his workload through the air. So if it was a full PPR, I'd definitely be going Freeman there. But if it's a standard league, I'm going to go with Darrell Henderson. But again, I'm not expecting anything more than low-end RB2, high-end RB3 numbers. Thinking of sitting Montgomery and Gordon and rolling with Jerick McKinnon even if Mostert plays. Need some upside. I think if you need some upside, then yeah, I think McKinnon's probably the play there. Gordon loses his upside with Philip Lindsay coming back into the lineup, and Montgomery right now, with the way this offense looks, has no upside. He has a fine floor, but he doesn't have upside. So if you need some upside, I'll go with Jerick McKinnon. Herbert or Bridgewater in 4-point passing touchdown. That's Bridgewater. I have him inside my top 12. Herbert outside the top 15. Hi, Kyle. Thanks for taking the time to answer everyone's questions. My pleasure. Standard: Justin Jackson, Zach Moss, or J.K. Dobbins. You have CMC on IR and Aaron Jones on bye. If it's only one, then I'm going to go with Justin Jackson here. Zach Moss, we just don't know what his outlook is for this week as far as him coming back off the injury. But then also we don't have any clarity on if this game is going to happen. So I'm going to lean into, and J.K. Dobbins is not someone that you can be looking at right now. So I'm going to go Justin Jackson there, but not excited about any of those options necessarily. Should I drop Devontae Parker and get Allen Robinson? What league are you in that Allen Robinson is on the waiver wire? Can I join? I think if you're looking at Devontae Parker and Allen Robinson, those guys are back-to-back in like season-long rankings. So I think that I would hold on to Devontae Parker. I want Allen Robinson. I want both. So I think I guarantee there's another option on your waiver wire or on your bench that you can drop to pick up Allen Robinson. I wouldn't drop Devontae Parker though, to go get him. All right, Herbert or Daniel Jones if the Bills game gets canceled. In that situation, I'll go with Daniel Jones, but I'm not super excited about Daniel Jones. You heard me talk about him earlier. 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the season. Great matchup. I don't want to trust him. All right, half PPR, Melvin Gordon, Josh Kelly, or Damian Harris at the flex. In that situation, I'll go with Melvin Gordon. I don't think any of these guys necessarily have huge ceilings, but so then at that point, I'm going to go into the work and lean into the workload and what we've seen. I think that Melvin Gordon has the best chance to score too. So I think I'll go with Melvin Gordon, but that's close with Josh Kelly. And then Damian Harris is down my rankings a little bit. Start Higbee or Ingram. I will go with Higbee in that situation. I think that this Washington defense can be beat with the tight end. So, excuse me. So I will go with Tyler Higbee there. And then start Landry, Shenault, or Le'Veon Bell in the flex in a half PPR league. I'll go with Le'Veon Bell there. But Shenault, that's an interesting call there. That's closer than I thought it would be. So I'll go with Le'Veon Bell, but again, it's pretty close with Shenault. Which 2 in PPR? David Johnson, Joe Mixon, and Antonio Gibson. In that situation, I'll go with David Johnson and Joe Mixon. Gibson or Montgomery. I'm going to go with Gibson there, actually. Full PPR, trade Darrell Henderson for Le'Veon Bell. Sure. I think that Darrell Henderson has a higher ceiling if he can get the workload, but with Cam Akers most likely returning to the lineup this week, that's not a guarantee. So I will go with Le'Veon Bell because of his safety that he provides week in and week out. I know that if I plug in Le'Veon Bell, he's not going to goose me like Darrell Henderson did last week. He's not going to put up 4 total points. Le'Veon Bell is going to get enough work in the receiving game. Pick 2, Boyd, Gurley, or Gordon for the most points. Todd Gurley is probably the one that you want to roll with in this matchup here against Carolina. Terrible run defense, and I think that Gurley can find the end zone multiple times like he did last week. So I'll go with Gurley there. PPR, CeeDee Lamb or Scary Terry. I will, of course, it's Terry McLaurin. I will go with Terry McLaurin there. I mentioned it with New York and Dallas. I don't think that Dallas is going to need to throw the ball a ton. I think CeeDee Lamb comes with a safe floor, but you're trying to figure out where the touchdowns are going to go. That's just a play that is a little bit more risky. I think that I like CeeDee Lamb more in the games where I know that Dallas is going to be throwing the ball a ton. So I'll go with Terry McLaurin there. I think that he has guaranteed target volume, 10-plus targets, easy, no matter the matchup. James Conner or Antonio Gibson or Deontay Johnson in half PPR. I'm going to go with James Conner there. Start 3, Josh Jacobs, James Robinson, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, Joshua Kelly. Goodness, what a lineup. Josh Jacobs and James Robinson for sure. And then Jonathan Taylor or Joe Mixon is where I'm deciding between. Let me pull up my rankings, the running backs. I have Joe Mixon at 11. I have, who did I say? James Conner? Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor at 7 right now. That's pretty aggressive. I might pull him down a little bit. I'll go with Jonathan Taylor there. That's close. So I will go, doubling back, I will go with Josh Jacobs, James Robinson, and Jonathan Taylor. Again, congratulations on that lineup, though. If you have all of those running backs, that's amazing. I'm very jealous. Pick 2, Devontae Freeman, Myles Gaskin, or Debo. Can't remember if I answered this question before. Devontae Freeman and Myles Gaskin. Chark or Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson for me. Ronald Jones or David Johnson. David Johnson for me. Let's fly through these. Latavius Murray or T.Y. Hilton in the flex. any question involving T.Y. Hilton, guys, assume my answer is going to be the other player. Latavius Murray there. Drake or Taylor in full PPR. I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor there. Full PPR, Chark, Jefferson, Metcalf, Carson, and James Robinson. Pick 3. I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf. Oh, man. In a full PPR, this is tough. I think that I might actually I might not go with Justin Jefferson there. I think that Carson and James Robinson are both going to have great scoring upside this week. It would be very hard for me to sit DJ Chark and Justin Jefferson, but I think I personally might be going DK Metcalf, Chris Carson, and James Robinson. In a full PPR, they're both involved through the receiving game, and they both have excellent chances to find the end zone multiple times. James Conner, Jonathan Taylor, or Melvin Gordon. Pick 2 in PPR. It's going to be James Conner and Jonathan Taylor here for me. Melvin Gordon with Philip Lindsay coming back into the lineup knocks him down the rankings just a little bit. Full PPR, would you start Rojo tonight? It all depends on who I'm considering. I think I have Ronald Jones at 23 in my rankings right now. I think that I'm expecting low-end RB2 production, but yet he comes with a concern that what happens if Keyshawn Vaughn comes out here and outplays him? Then and Ronald Jones has a bad drop. He gets benched. It's always a concern with Ronald Jones, and so he comes with a little bit of risk. But, Kevin, it all depends on who you are deciding between. DJ Chark, Deontay Johnson, Parker, Jerry Jeudy, or DJ Moore. Pick 3. A lot of DJ Chark questions this week. I'm going to go with Devontae Parker for sure. I'm going to go with DJ Chark for sure. And then it's between Deontay Johnson and DJ Moore. Jeudy is a wide receiver 3 for me this week. So where do I have Deontay Johnson? I have Deontay Johnson at 23, and I have DJ Moore all the way up at 15. I expect points to go up in the board in Atlanta and Carolina. So I'm going to go with DJ Moore there in that situation. I love that we were at the point of the fantasy season where someone starts a question with brutal. I know. Keyshawn Vaughn, Cam Akers, or Jeff Wilson. I think that Jeff Wilson would have been the answer last week, but he comes out and only gets just a few touches last week. Keyshawn Vaughn has more of an opportunity, has a higher ceiling. Cam Akers, we just don't even know what his health status is. We don't know what his involvement in the offense is going to look like. So really all these guys are outside my top 36 running backs. So at that point, I'm fine with any of them, because I'm just not expecting anything crazy. I think you go with the one who could be more involved in the receiving game, which is Keyshawn Vaughn, if you're looking at the injuries that Tampa Bay is dealing with at the receiving position, at the wide receiver position. So I think Keyshawn Vaughn here is going to be my answer, but I'm not expecting anything great. Half PPR, full PPR, DJ Chark or Robert Woods this week. In that situation, I'll go DJ Chark. I don't expect this to be a shootout for LA, which is where I like Robert Woods more. Robert Woods is a low-end wide receiver 2 for me. DJ Chark, a high-end wide receiver 2. Half PPR, Mostert or Melvin Gordon. You're going to kind of get your answer here. I think Raheem Mostert, with practice reports, I think Raheem Mostert does not play this week. So then that would be Melvin Gordon. Even if Mostert does play this week, I'm still probably going to go with Melvin Gordon just because we don't know what Raheem Mostert is going to be like coming off of the injury, and with Jerick McKinnon playing as well as he has too. Justin asks Anderson or Gibson. I'm assuming that is Robbie Anderson and Antonio Gibson. If that's the case, then I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson there. I love him in this matchup. Alvin Kamara for CMC and Allen Robinson in a PPR league. I'm fine making that trade. With CMC most likely coming back this week, it would be very, very hard for me to move on from Alvin Kamara. But yet, I think if you have a need at the wide receiver position and you can go get Allen Robinson and CMC, I think that's a fine move. Scotty Miller, Slayton, or Kelly in the flex. I'm going to go with Darius Slayton there if I need upside. If I need guaranteed volume, then I'm going to go with Josh Kelly. Scotty Miller, a little bit further down in my rankings. Right. Miles Sanders or Darrell Henderson. Miles Sanders pretty easily there. Not super excited about him, but we know his role on the team. So I'm going to go Miles Sanders there. Marquise Brown, Terry McLaurin, and A.J. Brown need to play too. Probably going to get your answer with A.J. Brown not playing this week. The Titans not playing. So Marquise Brown and Terry McLaurin are going to be my answers there. Sit 1, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, Chris Carson, or Kareem Hunt. Sitting one of them. Sounds crazy, but it actually might be Josh Jacobs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has #1 overall running back upside this week, going up against the Las Vegas Raiders defense. Josh Jacobs hasn't scored a touchdown since his 3-touchdown campaign in week 1 up against Carolina there. So he is still seeing the majority of the workload. But I think that if he hadn't had that big game in week 1, we would be talking about him in the same category that we were with Joe Mixon. Not necessarily all the way down to the point of Kenyon Drake, but yet because he's still producing on the ground. But only at like 3.6 yards per carry. It hasn't been a great start to the season for Josh Jacobs. So in this matchup, I expect Kansas City to get it out to a pretty big lead here. So I don't think Jacobs is going to see the carries that would put him above someone like Chris Carson or Kareem Hunt, who could easily find the end zone in this one. So in Kareem Hunt, tough matchup against Indianapolis, but I think he can see enough work in the receiving game to balance that out. So I'll sit Josh Jacobs there, but that sounds insane to say. If Mostert sits, would you start McKinnon over guys like David Johnson, DJ Moore, or DJ Chark? I can't remember if I answered this question. In that case, I'm starting Jerick McKinnon over him. No, I did answer this one, and I said I would start Chark over Jerick McKinnon. Full PPR, pick 2, Jonathan Taylor, Todd Gurley, or Joshua Kelly. I am going to go with Jonathan Taylor there and Todd Gurley. Pick 1 for your flex in a full PPR, Michael Thomas, James Robinson, or Jonathan Taylor. Michael Thomas for me, Jefferson, Henderson, or Terry McLaurin. I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson there. I want the upside play, and I think this is a fantastic matchup for him. Terry McLaurin, a little bit more tough of a matchup, has more upside for targets. But yeah, again, a tough matchup. So I'll let the matchup decide that for me. I'm going to go Justin Jefferson. Antonio Gibson or Justin Jefferson? I will go with Justin Jefferson. Should I drop Devontae Parker? Okay, I already answered that one. Start Jimmy Graham or Dalton Schultz? That situation, I'm going to go with Dalton Schultz. Sanders, I don't know which Sanders that is. Emmanuel Sanders or Miles Sanders? I'm going to assume it's Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, Rojo, or Gibson? In that situation, I will go with Miles Sanders and Gibson. Chase Edmonds, Joe Mixon, or Raheem Mostert. Non-PPR, that's Mixon pretty easily. Pick 2, Jacobs, Mixon, Taylor, Bell. Pick 2, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, and Le'Veon Bell. Joe Mixon and Jonathan Taylor for me. Yeah. I'm going to go with those two. Joe Mixon and Jonathan Taylor. But that's close. Josh Jacobs falls just behind Joe Mixon and Jonathan Taylor in my rankings. Half PPR, Gibson, Robbie, or Fuller. Robbie Anderson for me. Greetings from Austria. Awesome. Standard League, Dearness Johnson, Freeman, or Henderson. In a Standard League, I'm going to go with Darrell Henderson. If it was a PPR league, I think I talked about those two players earlier. If it was a PPR format, then I would go with Devontae Freeman. Full PPR, which two do you want? DJ Chark, David Johnson, Antonio Gibson. I'm going to go with DJ Chark and David Johnson there for me. Antonio Gibson, just more of a tough matchup there for him. And we don't know what this offense is going to look like with Kyle Allen. Would you trade Debo for DJ Moore? Yes, absolutely. I think that DJ Moore, he hasn't been as great as we all thought, but he's still a consistent wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. So I think that if you can get that, where Debo, we just don't know what his role in this offense is going to look like. Is he going to be reliant upon breaking away the big play? Is Brandon Ayuk going to be more of a part of the offense than we anticipate? Is George Kittle just going to get 15 targets every single week? We just don't know. So I think if I can make that trade, I'm making that trade. Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr., and Keenan Allen, pick 2 and half PPR. That's a good question. I have Keenan Allen just outside my top 12 this week. I have, who else do I have? It was Odell Beckham Jr. and Deontay Johnson. OBJ I have at 16, and then Deontay Johnson I have at 23. So I'm going to go with Keenan Allen and Odell there, but I wouldn't be surprised if Deontay Johnson sees enough targets to outproduce Odell Beckham Jr. Keenan Allen is just getting targeted like it's insane how many targets he's getting. So I'm going to lean into that. I don't think you can bench him. Full PPR, pick 2, Ronald Jones, Juju, Tyler Boyd, and Terry McLaurin. In full PPR, I'm going to go with Juju Smith-Schuster. I like the matchup for him. And then I will go with Terry McLaurin. Tyler Boyd, tough matchup here against Baltimore. I think he should be fine, but in comparison to those other players, I'm going to go Terry McLaurin and Juju. Pick 2, Tyler Boyd, Todd Gurley, or Gordon for the most points. Todd Gurley. Trade Mixon for Hunt. No, I'm going to keep Joe Mixon. Brady or Burrow, close, but I think that I'm going to let the injury concerns with Tampa Bay sway me there. I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. I'm not necessarily projecting a huge game from Burrow, but yet he should throw the ball enough to be able to return like top 15 value. And he's looked great. So I don't think you can bury him for someone who goes up against a tough matchup and doesn't have all of his wide receivers. So I'll go with Burrow. Robert Woods or T. Higgins in half PPR. I answered this question earlier. Here we go. James Conner, Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, Dearness Johnson, or Mixon. Need 2 in non-PPR. Don't overthink it, guys. It's James Conner and Joe Mixon. Trade for Justin Jefferson, giving up Le'Veon Bell if you have the RB depth to support it. Should I trade Derrick Henry? It all depends on what you can get for him. I'm not opposed to it, but I would only sell him off for a top-tier asset. All right. I'm getting a lot of duplicate questions, so I'm trying to find the new ones. Make sure we get to more. Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, or OBJ. Pick 2 in a full PPR. In a full PPR, I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin and OBJ. I think that's where I'm going to let... Terry McLaurin's just going to see too many targets. Again, I've talked about tough matchup. OBJ, I don't expect... this is a very, very tough matchup against Indianapolis, but I still think that he's going to see enough work. DJ Moore, oh, man, that's close. But I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin and OBJ. All right. Scrolling down here. Let's find some new questions. Julian Edelman or David Montgomery? In that situation, I'm going to go with David Montgomery. Half PPR, Marquise Brown or Jamison Crowder. I'm going to go with Marquise Brown there for the boom potential. Ertz or Ingram this week. I'm going to go with Zach Ertz still over Evan Ingram. In your flex, Scotty Miller, Hayden Hurst, or Myles Gaskin. Still going to go with Hayden Hurst there. I'll go with Hayden Hurst if it's a standard league or a half PPR. I'll go with Scotty Miller if it's a full PPR. All right. Matt Ryan or Big Ben. I'm going to go with Matt Ryan still. Mark Andrews or Darren Waller. Those guys are both top 4 options for me this week. I really don't have much of a preference. So in that case, I'm just going to lean into my rankings. Mark Andrews has more of a chance to find the end zone. Darren Waller could soak up targets. So if it's a standard league, I'll go with Mark Andrews because I think he has a better chance to score. And if it is a full PPR league or half, I will go with Darren Waller. Let's keep going here. If Diggs doesn't play, start Juju or Robbie Anderson. In a standard league, that is close. I am going to go with Robbie Anderson. I have him at 18. I have Juju at 20. In a full PPR, sit one, Jonathan Taylor, Kenyon Drake, Gurley, or Rojo. Kenyon Drake in that instance, not super excited about him, just with what he's put up recently. Full standard. Should I trade Mike Davis for Cam Newton or for Robert Woods? If you can trade Mike Davis for Robert Woods, absolutely do that trade in a heartbeat. For Cam Newton, sure, because I think he presents long-term usage over your Mike Davis, who's going to lose his value at the end of this week. So, but I would be absolutely going after Robert Woods if I can make that trade. Right, Justin Jefferson or Mike Evans in full PPR. Good question. Mike Evans is a low-end wide receiver 2 for me this week. Justin Jefferson, same range, but I think that Jefferson offers more of a ceiling for you because he has a great matchup. I've talked about it, but then he also isn't dealing with these injury concerns. So I'm going to go Justin Jefferson there. All right. Half PPR, Damian Harris, Dearness Johnson, or Darrell Henderson. In that situation, I'm probably still going to go Darrell Henderson, but it would be then Damian Harris is the next option there. Dearness Johnson's a little bit further down my rankings. I want to see it happen 1 week before I confidently roll him in, so Darrell Henderson there, but as nothing more than a high-end RB3. Gaskin, Mostert, or Joshua Kelly. I'm going to go with Joshua Kelly there in that situation. I don't think Mostert plays, and I think Gaskin doesn't have the scoring upside. Henderson does if he gets the touches. All right. Full PPR, Dalton Schultz or Evan Ingram. I will go with Dalton Schultz. PPR, Anthony Miller or Brandon Cooks. I'm going to go with Anthony Miller here. Tags was talking about it's actually a great matchup for the slot receiver in Tampa Bay, so against Tampa Bay. So I'll go with Anthony Miller, but both of them are nothing more than they're around like wide receiver 40 in my rankings. Not super excited about either of them. All right. Looking here, PPR, Robert Woods or Tyler Boyd. I will go with Robert Woods there, but that's close. Would you trade Devontae Parker for Deontay Johnson in a standard league? I'm going to stick with Devontae Parker there. Waller or Schultz, don't overthink it. It's Darren Waller. All right. Gesicki or Graham. In that situation, I'm probably going to go with Jimmy Graham. Gaskin, Bell, or Boyd in half PPR. I'm probably going to go with Le'Veon Bell. Assuming that he comes off of IR, everything is pointing towards that. So, but if for some reason he doesn't play, then I'll pivot to Tyler Boyd. Otherwise, I'm playing Le'Veon Bell. Greetings from Germany. Full PPR pick 2, Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Ronald Jones, and Darrell Henderson. Dalvin Cook and Jonathan Taylor pretty easily there for me. Half PPR, Dearness Johnson, Chase Edmonds, or Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray, pretty easily. I think that he is seeing enough work, and he has scoring upside that he should easily outscore those two. Minshew or Cousins. I'm going to go with Minshew there, but that's close. All right. Full PPR, Juju or Ronald Jones in the flex. I will go with Juju. And thoughts on Allen Robinson tonight? Not a great matchup, but yet at the same time, he's going to see enough volume. So I think you can easily roll out Allen Robinson tonight as a low-end wide receiver 1. All right, guys, that is going to do it. Thank you so much for joining me for the past hour. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to chat. Hopefully we got to all the questions that there was a ton of questions that I didn't get to. It's how it is. But hopefully we got to a ton, and hopefully that some of the other questions that were asked help you flesh out your thoughts for your fantasy lineup this week. Before you leave, hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you show your support. Hit the like button on this video, guys. Greatly appreciate it. And then also you can find and follow me on Twitter at KyleYNFL. Thank you guys so much. We've got football on the TV tonight. Enjoy it, and we'll talk to you soon.